All right, so good evening. This December 8th open meeting of the Conservation Commission, Newberry Conservation Commission, is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Newberry Conservation Commission is convening by Zoom, as posted on the agenda, in which you can find on the town's website, which identifies how the public may join. You may join us by going through the links on the agenda and entering the relevant passwords. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and/or telephone conference. Meeting materials were provided to the board prior to the meeting for review. Applicants or their representatives may be called upon to speak and, if needed, share information to the screen. Please state your intention to do so after you've been called. For the ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes, I, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, question, or motion. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. Board members should be called upon in first name alphabetical order to ease the process. If board members wish to engage with each other, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After the board members have spoken, the chair will afford the public comment as follows. The chair will seek questions through the raise hand function. For video conference participants, this function can be accessed by clicking on the participants option listed in the menu below the photo gallery. Hover your cursor in this area if you don't see it. Well, the window will open and display on the right. On the bottom of this participant area, you will see the list of phone or video participants, and on the bottom, you will see the ability to click on a button to raise your hand. Please ensure your name is displayed. List your name, address, and then your question. Telephone participants can use their phone's keypad while in a Zoom meeting to raise their hand by hitting *9. The chair will then seek questions from the public that have hit the raise hand button in the order of which they are listed. The participants will be called on to identify their name and address and then their question. The chair will afford the applicant or their representative the opportunity to reply. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. The board will continue down the list of those in the raise hand column and again afford the applicant or rep an opportunity to speak. Should there be a physical or electronic submittal of questions or concerns, they will be read for the record, and again, the applicant or rep will be afforded the opportunity to speak if the issues raised have not yet been addressed. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. Additional agenda items will be called upon and handled in the same manner, and that is that. All right. So let's see what we've got on our agenda. Let's get rolling here. So our next regularly scheduled meeting date is set as January the 5th of 2021. And we have minutes for September 15th, October 20th, and November 10th. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes as written? No? Okay. Well, then, hearing no commentary, would anybody like to make a motion to accept the minutes as written?
Move to accept minutes as written. Second.
All right. Thank you. All right. Roll call vote. Daniel?
Yes.
Sorry, Daniel Bill. Sorry, I skipped the D. I skipped the B and went to the D. Great. All right, let's keep my alphabet out of order then. How about Mary? Were you there for any of those? You're an abstain, right?
No, just the November 10th, I think I was at. So yeah, I guess I better abstain since I haven't read them.
Okay.
Yep.
Peter?
Yes.
And Kevin?
Yes.
Great. Meeting minutes all set. Next on our to-do list, we have a public hearing with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Parker River National Wildlife Refuge, 6 Plum Island Turnpike, an RDA to implement salt marsh and coastal habitat management and resilience action. And I believe there are some changes to this that came down recently, right, Bill? Bill Holt?
Yes.
Excuse me.
Actually, the applicant is actually going to be.
Bill, hold on a second. I think Mary wants to.
Yeah, I just request to abstain from this hearing just because I have similar project with similar partners that is has been before the commission and maybe again. So I need to abstain from this. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. All right, go on, Bill.
Okay, the application was originally signed by a representative from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as the applicant, and that has been changed to Greg Moore from UNH. He is the actual applicant. He's going to be working on the wildlife refuge property with a permit. Mr. Moore is present, and he did send an application that he signed as the applicant, so we're good to go. So I think best to have him present his project.
Okay, Greg, the floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you for having me. And I'm gonna do the share screen. Am I coming through all right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, terrific. So for the record, I'm Dr. Greg Moore, a restoration ecologist from the University of New Hampshire, and working in partnership with the Parker River National Wildlife Refuge, as was just stated, on some management techniques on the refuge properties. And I'll pull up my screen, and I have a short series of slides that hopefully will dovetail with the Appendix A that I submit with the original request for determination of applicability. And please feel free to interrupt me, because once this is on, I won't necessarily see your faces because the way my computer seems to behave. All right, the reason that I'm here tonight under a request for determination of applicability is that in 2016, again in coordination with the refuge, the University of New Hampshire participated in a pilot study using some small runnels, which I'll explain in the next upcoming slides. And that application received a negative determination from the commission. And so this is why, following the guidelines of the previous application for effectively the same work, I am before you tonight. Okay, so I'm joined intellectually, not in person, by my collaborator from the University of New Hampshire, Dr. David Burdick. And again, this work is done in collaboration with Nancy Powell of the Park River National Wildlife Refuge, as well as Sue Adamovich from Rachel Carson's Refuge, Jeff Wilson from New England Wetland Restoration, and Peter Phippen from the Great Marsh Partnership and the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission. I apologize, it's a mouthful. So marsh pools, most folks have seen them. They are natural occurrences on the marsh platform, but there are many cases in which marsh pools are forming as a result of legacy management practices, such as diking and draining and things of this nature. So what we're seeing again and again, what's shown on the figure on the right, is this pattern of what's affectionately known as waffles in syrup, where historic drainages form crisscross patterns, and say like a waffle, and then lead to subsidence of the marsh surface, collapse the marsh surface in which water collects and is trapped. This no longer has regular hydrologic connections. This can worsen over time, and pools, particularly ones that are associated with anthropogenic or man-made impacts on the marsh, tend to increase dramatically. And I have some footage of that for you guys. So as the marsh systems begins to collapse, erosion becomes more prevalent, the pools deepen, and the problem kind of accelerates, and smaller pools merge into this term called a mega pool, which is really just a series of large pools that coalesce over time. And we're seeing that more and more frequently. So management actions that are aimed at slowing or reversing mega pool formation are really needed in today's situation of sea level rise. So if you have been out in the marsh recently, this is a photo from the summer. You're seeing lots of these pools starting to coalesce, a lot of algal mats forming, and those algal mats end up killing the marsh edge vegetation. And then they can really, in the lower slide, you're seeing how they really, there's a human being in that picture for scale. And I've been working out in this marsh for 12 or 15 years now, and this is just becoming much more prevalent. So what do these mega pools look like? Well, here's a typical scene on the marsh from this summer, and you're seeing certainly wildlife utilization. And is this lagging? I hope not, because it's video. Is it all right?
It's a little choppy, but it's okay.
All right, not my best work, but I wanted you to see it because some of these are pretty remote, and that's part of why, part of what this particular proposal is about. So we've got some mega pools that are really hard to get to, got to get there with the right tide in a small boat and do your ecological monitoring or your actions and get out before the next tide. That's part of the importance of what's being proposed, because they're a little more difficult to get to. So for those of you who've heard the term runnel, I really want to take a moment to explain that not all runnels are created equal. Up until our pilot study, our pilot project in 2016, when I thought of runnels and most people thought of runnels, you expect heavy machinery, shovels, digging, things like what we're seeing here. These are images from Save the Bay, from Wenley Ferguson's group down in Rhode Island, who really pioneered a lot of great work in this subject area. But I want to be clear that these are a different approach of runneling than what you're going to see today. So runnels are not new, although it seems to be back in the common parlance, but this is a leftover from mosquito control, or not leftover, but an active practice of mosquito control. The shape and length and how they're constructed differ widely, but all of them have the similar goals. Let's reduce or reverse pool enlargement, improve tidal exchange, improve water quality in the pools, reconnect hydrology, increase habitat heterogeneity, really just make the system better, but really slow the expansion of the pools. And ultimately, you put all those together and you're building marsh resilience, which is critical these days. What's different and what's in the RDA proposal I prepared for you is the notion of compaction runnels. And this is what we proposed in 2016 that received the negative determination. Compaction runnels are essentially compacting the marsh surface mechanically with hand tools. You're looking at our whole team of laborers, a grad student and my colleague Dave Burdick, and a post pounder. The runnels that you're looking at in these images were different than what's being proposed. The current runnels will be shallower but wider. So they'll have a shallower profile but a wider cross-sectional area. They'll be 8 to 20 inches long, no more than 4 to 6 inches deep. And you'll see from our selection of the sites that we opted to do this, they will not exceed 10 feet in linear length. This is not an approach suitable for every pool management scenario, but it is a technique that was sort of designed specifically for pools that had nearby connections that we could achieve management goals, particularly in places that are remote and where mobilization, demobilization of heavy equipment is difficult or would cause unnecessary alteration or damage. Again, there's no cut, there's no fill. This is compaction we joke that if we had a class of fifth graders come through on an educational field trip, they might create a runnel just by their feet walking to the site. So the level of impact is minimal. And because we're selecting areas very close to tidal creeks that are already impacted by some form of marsh collapse, they compress very easily. When I spoke to Bill earlier today, he was good enough to take my phone call with some questions. And I made a point to remind him that the creation of the particular runnels proposed in this RDA could be completed within a day or two. Really, the only limit is that the tide goes down and leaves you out there in your rubber raft waiting for the next tide. So if the tide weren't involved, this could all be done well inside of one day. The cartoon on the bottom was drafted by Jeff Wilson, who's part of our site selection team and our broader project team, showing schematically the historical collapsed drainage here and the dimensions of this compaction runnel. Jeff uses the term micro runnels when he refers to that. So his figure refers to it as a micro runnel. Our approaches are effectively the same. I apologize for how small the figure is, but the dimensions there are showing 18 to 20 inches in width and 4 to 6 inches in depth. All right, so this is a 30 seconds of a candidate site for one of our runnels that are proposed. There's Dave Burdick, who was about to install a water level recorder that day. This was earlier in the summer while we were checking hydrology and doing RTK elevation surveys. And coming into the shot here is the edge of the pool. You can see macroalgae or microfilamentous algae thrown up on the marsh surface. And to the left, you're seeing the connection to a vegetated pool. Apologies for the wind noise. But you can see here, if you were to stomp through that or compact it with a post pounder or a tamper, you could make that connection very easily to 4 inches in depth and 20 some odd inches wide. So this is very different than the images you saw with the tractors going through and track vehicles and excavators and whatnot. All right, so the benefits of compaction runnels or any runnel, well, compaction runnels particularly, is that it minimizes the impact to the marsh. It does not result in destabilization of the edges. We like them particularly because they don't result in sediment loss from the pool. We want to make this as gradual as possible so that you don't have erosion scouring from the pool itself. The design of this will be spec'd for roughly 80% or no less than 80% of drainage during an ebb tide. So there's going to be a serious amount of exchange created, which is central to the goal. And it's well suited for adaptive management because it's so low impact and low key. It can be widened if the goals have not been met. Doesn't require cut or fill to accomplish, and it's very minimizing the costs as the equipment and mobilization that typical runnel projects involve. It's just another beast entirely. And I am well aware of the other runnel project being proposed, and it's going to be a fantastic project with lots of great innovations in it. But these are very different in their scope and their methodologies. So just to give some context, in our pilot study from 2016, we continue to monitor this site sort of casually. Here's the pool in 2016 from Google Earth, very deep, perpetually flooded, and it was expanding. You could see it in time series in Google Earth imagery. Here's that same pool 3 years later, and you can see that massive pool has been reduced to a couple of smaller pools, and the formerly flooded areas are revegetating with marsh vegetation, which is a central goal of restoring structure and function in the marsh platform. So there's a lot more diversity in the habitats that are there. There's mudflat, there's vegetated areas, there's pools, a great amount of, and tidal exchange daily. To zoom in on that, just to give element of scale, this yellow line, I don't know if it shows up well or not, that was essentially the runnel that made that connection. we subsequently went back in and reversing here and worked on a little area right here that resulted in drainage of both edges of that mega pool. And the length of that is consistent with what's being proposed here today. That was a 10-foot run, and that's the longest length of runnel that you will find in our proposal. So what have we done to date? Over the last actually year and a half, we've met with our project team on site when we could all get together and be together in the field. Luckily, we got that sorted out. We've had a number of field site visits to winnow down our list of possible pools to the ones that are the simplest and the shortest run and the most that we're confident of success. We established rigorous monitoring, which included transects at each site, 2 transects of 50 plots each for vegetation, RTK elevation surveys, installation of water level recorders. The list goes on and on. And as well as some avian surveys, because we're interested in bird utilization and the benefits that will result. And what's proposed in the RDA, or for review of this commission, is the establishment of 3 compaction runnels, all less than 10 feet in length, with the dimensions that I described before. That will be completed ideally in late winter during senescence of the plants. It's not done during the growing season necessarily to avoid any impacts there. Then we'll follow the rigorous monitoring protocol that was involved in Appendix A, I think Table 1. It showed all the requisite monitoring that is part of the support for the project through National Wildlife Federation. We do intend to engage the public from a distance when circumstances will allow. We don't intend to get the public way deep into these systems, but one of the sites, as you'll see, is very close to some observation platforms from the refuge and will allow people to participate in birding activities and possibly some demonstration activities. Finally, we'll be obviously preparing reporting for both our funder, the refuge, the general public, as well as our colleagues in the scientific community. We're pretty interested in seeing how this goes. And here's a miniature of our site. And I'm going to just jump to the larger version of that. It makes it a little easier to see. These are the 3 runnels will be shown by the yellow stars. I should say the 3 pools that we hope to do a runneling activity. In addition, there are 2 pools that are natural that do not appear to have resulted from any prior management or land alteration shown in this figure, as well as no action pools, meaning those are pools where they would be a good candidate, but we'd like to observe what happens if you do nothing, as a do nothing option as well, both from a management perspective as well as an intellectual activity for the research that we do. There are those sites, the only locations where any work will be done are the pools that are starred in yellow, and again, using the dimensions that I refer to that do not involve cut or fill removal of sediment in any way, shape, or form. And that, I think, is it. So I turn it over to the commission to field any and all questions that we have time for. And thank you.
All right, thank you. I have a number of questions, but I'm gonna go around the horn first. Who wants to go? Bill, do you have any questions? Not Holt.
Bill Lloyd or Bill Lloyd?
All right, Bill Lloyd. Bill Holt, you get to go at the end.
Okay, thanks. I'll make sure.
Once I'm worn down, you can go. Okay.
Exactly. I'm gonna wear you out.
All right.
All right, Bill Lloyd, nothing. You good? All right. So Daniel, how about yourself?
I mean, it seems like it's a very interesting and worthwhile project. One thing that I think I just over the years, I've seen a lot of different in a lot of different management activity of this sort in this general area. And it's hard for me to make sense sometime. It'd be really helpful, I think, is if the various different approaches that have been tried over the years, if we had some sort of write-up to better understand all the different approaches that have been taken, how they've worked out. I mean, we've recently heard the trustees of reservations approach, which is a little bit different. So it's sometimes sort of hard to make sense of it all. It'd be great to have a write-up on that.
May I respond? Or am I?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I really appreciate that comment. And there have been an awful lot of methods out there. One of the elements of this that I feel pretty proud and confident of is that we did complete the pilot, which was doing the same thing on 2 pools that were runneled in a similar manner. And we are in the process of finalizing that manuscript. I'd be more than happy to share it. It's not done, but it is in a format that shows how effective that was at returning plant communities to the site, obtaining the desired hydrology. That doesn't fully answer your comment, because I know that you're referring to the many different management techniques, but this is one that's been pretty well documented and that I can speak directly for as having publishable evidence of its efficacy.
Yes.
Yeah. Any follow-up, Dan?
No, I like the project.
All right, that's fair. Well, Greg, I think just to address Dan's point a little bit, as you've reached different stages in, the publication thing, I presume that you're sharing out the results of your research with the refuge, and they've got sort of their own stash. But when you share that stuff out, if you want to CC Bill, then we don't have to go, in a manner of speaking, and track them down. Or if you CC Bill Holt, and if we have something sort of in-house that we can look back at, I think, to Dan's point, when we perhaps have a future conversation in a different context, we can say, hey, well, we've got this paper and we've read the thing, and we actually, we don't have to go dig it out of the internet, right? We can just go harass our agent for it. That might be nice.
Right. Well, we do have the interim report from the pilot study. It's not a published report in the, peer-reviewed sense, but it is a shareable PDF. I'd be happy to provide that.
Cool. Thanks, Greg. Kevin, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm not knowledgeable in all this stuff. So the only thing that kind of came to mind, and it's not really part of our jurisdiction or whatever, really, I don't think, is like creating these runnels, for example, making a channel in the sand when you're at the beach, when you're a little kid, water comes in and washes it out. Is this something that's going to have to happen periodically to maintain it? And then how realistic is that? If this is going to have to happen every few years, every time we get a storm at king tide, it gets washed out. Do you have to come back the next year to redo it? That was my kind of concern anyway.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that our partners at the refuge have brought up. And maybe it's a little different, not that it's going to wash away and dissipate the way the sandcastle example is, but actually that were the compaction runnels too small to have the cross-sectional area to achieve the drainage, and are they too small to be self-maintaining? And as a result, it was a great suggestion that came largely from the refuge and our partner Jeff Wilson, was to say, let's not guess with that. Let's make it wider and it will be more self-maintaining. And that mirrors a natural breach outcome. So some of the pools that are outside of the frame of this image that we're looking at on the screen are actually natural breach sites where natural circumstances led to the erosion of the pool till it got to a creek, and it's now made its hydrologic connection and it essentially achieves what we're trying to fast forward a little bit here with this project. So we're pretty confident that those will be self-sustaining, and the pilot from 2016, even with a narrower cross section, are still functioning. Of the two, the northern one did not drain as much as I think from the management perspective we had hoped, and the southern one drained exactly on point. So with a little more action, that could be remedied, but we're not talking about that right now.
Thanks. I'm all set then, Brian. Thanks.
Okay. Peter?
Thanks. Hey, Greg, thank you for the great presentation and bringing the awareness of the importance of this process. A couple things. One is I felt like I just went back to undergrad, so I feel so much younger tonight. I mean, my brain is alive again, and this is fascinating stuff. And, this atraumatic approach is like, it's great, making these small little tracks. And, I think bringing the fifth graders out is a phenomenal idea, because they could get a great experience while they're out there. Not that you're going to do that, but I think it's great. And, power on. I think it's wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. I always worry about giving any kind of a lecture after dinner because, it put people to sleep all day long. I didn't want it to do it to you guys as well. But thank you.
All right. Well, then I guess it's my turn. I'll break out my comments sort of like we'll do the regulatory stuff first and we'll get into the process and the technique a little. So, you did this as an RDA based on how it went last time. Did you get any feedback from DEP last time about this being better filed under a restoration NOI or any of the other, various and sundry regulatory vehicles?
Well, my answer is no, but in fairness, it was my colleague, Dave Burdick, who was more involved in the permitting process. But I did discuss it with him at length, and this was a negative determination, and off we went and did it. That said, and I had this conversation just briefly because Bill was willing to take my call a little earlier this afternoon. I did make a presentation very, very similar to this. This has been updated a bit informally through a sort of webinar that was hosted by the refuge for regulators who are interested in a number of projects out at the refuge. And I was really excited to have the opportunity to talk about this. The question was brought out whether, what pathways to go forward with, but the meeting was not formally a regulatory decision-making meeting. So following along with that protocol, some of the regulators, particularly Rachel Freed, said, I'm not going to comment on this. And if you're going forward with an RDA, then you go forward with an RDA. And that's the town decides that that's what they want to do, then that's what they want to do. So I didn't formally, it wasn't through a formal process, but we did have that exchange. The question was asked a number of different ways. And I certainly not avoiding doing a notice of intent, but it seemed as though if we had done as an RDA previously with no issues, it just seemed to be logical to proceed this way. So that's a very roundabout answer, but
it's okay. We're fairly used to them.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. On a certain level, I could see the argument in both directions. And, my line of thought to you is that if we went ahead and approved this and DEP decided that we chose the wrong vehicle, would that be problematic, for your timeline?
don't really entirely know how to answer that question, because I don't know the ramifications necessarily of that. I would guess that if DEP felt that wasn't right, then they would ask for a submittal of a notice of intent. And years ago, I used to be working consulting ages ago, and that can be a long process or it can be a straightforward process. So I don't know. I know that our project has 1.5 to 2 years left in it. Ideally, we would like to get the installation of these, or the establishment of the runnels sooner than later. Some other things hang in the balance of that, because we want to have enough years of monitoring within the scope of the project. But I certainly understand the prudence required in these cases.
Okay.
I guess I would just add that under the notion of, in some ways, if these runnels, the pools continue to expand at the rate they're expanding, it's somewhat inevitable that some of these pools will breach in 10 years or 15 years. So I kind of view this as, if we can reconnect the hydrology sooner. I mean, this is more of a restoration-based approach here, that you can slow or reverse that pool expansion and actually start to heal that pool system before you let it expand wildly to the point where it just makes its way to creek edges and blows out. So the design of the compaction approach that doesn't cut or fill is how, in my mind, I've rationalized that the impacts are minimal and ultimately a sort of preventative measure.
Okay. So then, getting into that compaction detail, I think Kevin started to sort of go down this route. But if you over compact, will you end up with sort of hard edges along the end of the compaction channel? If you stomp really hard and you go down 12 inches instead of 6, in a manner of speaking, is there has that thought experiment played out yet?
Yeah, it has, because you've got, depending on which site it is, the marsh platform is pretty soggy in some of the places. So I actually, and having done it a few years ago, the amount of compaction required varies, and it's not like you're going, you don't just put your foot right through it. That said, if you step into one of these pools, you'll be up to your waist very quickly. So we are working within the marsh platform that is vegetated and has relatively dense peat. Runnel 3 of the 3 pools that activity is proposed has the softest sediment, and that would be the one place I'd be more cautious about compaction. But the rate at which you do it is, it's not like a stick of dynamite. You start doing it and it works. It's a very incremental process. Runnel 3 will be easier to compact, whereas I think Runnel 1 and 2, which are shorter, but have more of a base of high marsh spartanopatens peat, and that takes more work. It's a denser peat. But in both cases, and we saw this at the pilot study, the compaction of that made for a really stable swale for that water to go through, and it actually benefited in terms of not having it be loose, unconsolidated material that just washed out. At least that was what we watched happen. But yeah, that experiment that plays out for real, and it's a great question.
Okay, so how does this relate to expected sea level rise? Because you're not going to be able to undo the compaction, and so you may, arguably, you save the vegetation, and you're not going to have just bare soil. But when the sea level rise comes up again, these are going to be your first victim.
You're absolutely right, but the counter argument is, right now these are pools that, with that same sea level rise scenario, They do not have a hydrologic connection to drain. And so each time there's a king tide, they fill right up to the brim and they stay filled over and over again. So the creation of this compaction runnel allows for regular exchange of the water coming in and coming out. And in a perfect case scenario, now that we have sediment, more regular tidal exchange with suspended sediment in this and revegetation within the pool itself, in a perfect world, you'd capture more sediment and you'd build the marsh platform and accrete sediment. That's the goal. If you don't do anything with them, you allow them to remain anoxic, anaerobic, and not exchanging, then they deepen and widen. So it's not perfect. It's a Band-Aid of sorts, but it's trying to slow the rate of expansion.
So just to rephrase to make sure that I think I understand you, what this offers is more sedimentation in the low spots without leaving the water at the low tide.
Yep.
Okay. And so the compacted channel will fill in naturally when the puddle and the channel, sorry, when the pond and the channel realign at grade with the rest of the marsh.
No, I'm better clarify. I do not view the runnel itself to close in. The reason, and this is part of the idea of widening that was recommended of the cross-sectional area, was that we want it to continue to be an open hydrologic exchange. So tides can go in and they can drain out to get to that 80% drainage endpoint that the refuge is seeking, and the tide goes in and out. If we don't do this, we'll continue to get higher tides that fill the pool, leaving the pool to expand laterally and potentially get deeper as decomposition ensues. So we actually want the runnel to stay open and self-maintain for this to actually work. And the pilot study from 2016 showed that the force of that water coming out of that pool keeps that channel open, or that runnel open to maintain the benefits of the strategy. Does that make sense?
I think so. You know, this is within the space of the 10 or 20 minutes we're doing here. Yeah, I'm with you, but
well, what we want is the tide to go in and out of the pool and have good exchange of oxygenated water that's better for the organisms in that pool. It's better for revegetation. And if plants start to grow in those newly barren areas that are benefiting from the drainage, then when tides come in carrying sediment, that vegetation should capture that sediment instead of have it wash out. And ideally, the pool starts to grow into itself. The vegetation stabilizes. And we've seen that very clearly in the pilot. If I went back a slide or two, I don't know if I'm still on the screen here, but this slide right here.
Right, Greg, you're okay. I'm following you. You know, my concern has more to do with the lifespan of the runnel. You know, because if you succeed with the pool, then at a certain point, the pool is going to be at grade or taller than your runnel, and so then your runnel just becomes
okay. Now I understand.
like a slope. Yeah.
And to that, and right at the leading edge of the runnel of the pool, and just out on the downspout of it, if you will, there tends to be a scour from the force of water coming in and out of that bottleneck. So that's what keeps that open. But yes, in a perfect world that I don't think we'll achieve in 3 to 5 or 10 years, that pool could accumulate sediment and build its way up. But based on the rates of sediment accretion in the marsh, that's the long haul. I think in the time frame that we're talking, you won't see that pool heal itself vertically, but you may see it heal itself laterally, as in closing in and becoming smaller in its total area.
Okay. I promise I'm getting near the end of the questions.
Well, I don't think I'm happy to answer them all.
The pilot project and the natural blowouts that you referred to, you know, with the changing climate as a background and the changing water level as a background, why do you need a control? You know, like arguably a control is for replication, and so that people could do the same thing later. And, you know, there won't be the same thing later because waters will move and the temperature will rise and CO2 fluctuates, blah, blah, blah. You know, and you've sort of got a natural example of what will happen and your pilot. So what role are the controls playing?
So the natural breach, in a way, is, I didn't really explain this because I didn't really want to bore everybody, but we have vegetation transects on two sides, roughly 90-degree angles of the pool. None of the pools are perfectly round or anything. And we have another set in the pool itself. So they're paired. We have a marsh platform and one in the pool. And we are quite interested in how the natural breaches, some of which we know the dates of, have revegetated as a result of natural breaching. I mean, you could say in 3 years, you know, this we know is unvegetated. We can look at the aerial imagery. So we're interested in knowing that rate of revegetation compared to the ones where we are hoping to create a runnel. And that's our sort of a bit of a control for us to know, are we hitting what would happen under natural conditions? The no action pools are ones where we say, we'd love to do a runnel there, but let's just see if we do nothing, how much worse is it going to get? And I didn't mention it, but we've GPSed the perimeter of those with an RTK to 1/2 centimeter accuracy, or actually closer than that. And we're really documenting how much they expand or contract.
Okay. So, and you said that it's a 2-year project?
The project is a 3-year. We're well into year one, like year 1.5, I think. And I believe we've sought an extension. But in terms of the monitoring that is proposed, just for a whole series of reasons, the monitoring will continue out several years out. That's a lot to do with my new PhD student who's starting and is very interested in this as her dissertation project. But even regardless, David Burdick and I will take any chance we can get to continue to monitor sites. So within the scope of the funded project that's supporting the action, I think we have 2 years, a little over 2 years left in that project. And I mean, I put it in writing that monitoring will continue, assuming that our good relationship with the refuge allows us to continue to have access and to monitor outside of the project scope.
Okay. The line of timeline that I was going down, I was thinking because the RDA is generally good for about 3 years, and that if you guys were doing the 2 years, like I initially heard, you know, I was gonna ask if there was plans to put runnels into your controls at the end of the, you know, the watching phase.
Yeah, we haven't had that conversation. I know that I think Nancy Powell was on the call earlier, and Peter Phippen has also been involved in some of this as well. And it'd be something that we would talk about for sure. There may be evidence to support that. And I would love to do that, but you know, right now I'm just hoping to be able to do anything. So I'm trying to contain myself.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, I think I should probably stop since, you know, I think Kevin, Peter, and Dan are having more trouble listening to me than they had listening to your presentation. But
I'm just happy to be in a Zoom call where people answer any questions.
Yeah, I could poke around on this all day. This is right up my alley. Bill Holt, what's on your mind?
Okay. Well, I don't really have any technical questions. I kind of understand what's going on, but it's not my expertise either. But I have some procedural questions that we should probably address. And you brought it up, the RDA versus a notice of intent. And I spoke with Alicia from DEP, asking her the same question. And the response I got was that the RDA that was done in 2016, the DEP had missed the boat on that one. They should have probably appealed it, and they didn't. Either to workload or it slipped by the wayside. So my gut feeling is that if we issue a negative determination, even as a -3 with conditions, and I was thinking of the conditions that we might impose on that, or the DEP still might appeal it, and that opens up a whole different set of guidelines for the applicant. At that point, it becomes a state permit, and they would likely have to have a MEPA review, which involves an ENF or an EIR filing with MEPA, which is timelines for DEP appeal and a MEPA review is going to probably set them back quite a bit of time. So I'm not sure if we'd be doing a disservice by giving them a negative determination. But then I'm thinking to myself, well, if we give them a positive determination, we make them file a notice of intent with us, they'd be back probably in January with basically the same application, I would imagine. The information seems relatively complete. The amount of work per runnel is 10 linear feet, 8 to 20 inches wide and 4 to 6 inches deep. It seems my quick calculations are 7 to 16 square feet or 6 to 9 cubic feet of disturbance, which seems a little bit de minimis to me. Just it's a very small amount of work area done by hand tools, no equipment coming out to the site, accessed by water to the site. So I think that, you know, the work could be done relatively with very little impact to the marsh. It just seems to me that if we go to notice of intent, we get the same information, we're going to come up with the same couple of conditions we give us with a negative determination. I just don't want to see him end up with a appeal with DEP and have it drag out for a year and a half before he gets a permit. Conditions I would think of.
Let's talk that one out a little bit more while we're on it, because I agree with you, but you know, what grounds would they have, right? Because they're not moving soil. They're just pushing it down. There's no digging, there's no equipment, there's no earth moving, right? And like, as a, you know, off the cuff kind of thing, you know, DEP will appeal over earth moving and protective type erosion-y things, right? Mm-hmm. So I totally get where you're coming from. And, you know, I have the same concern. I'd rather actually see the project move than not. But, you know, DEP seems to be, you know, they've got their eyes on us at the moment. So, you know, what, you know, can you see where they would stick it? You know, like how would they hang this one out? You know, how would they pick this one up? What's the connection?
That I think it's just because it's the work the entire project's in the resource area. It's in the marsh. Granted, there's no real earthwork, like you say. It's rather minimal. So I think
so
if we
just light up the map in the middle of the refuge, in the middle of the all of their like stacks of overlays, whether you know, all of the resource areas, all of the species, all the things, because they're working in that map spot, and we approved an RDA with minimal restrictions. You think that would just sort of light up the board?
I'm not sure. I'm just basically asking Alicia that and kind of got the answer that yes, they think it might. So I'm also thinking if we do a notice of intent and we give conditions, we're going to give probably similar conditions that we do as a RDA -3 with conditions, I assume I was thinking of what we would do. We'd probably limit the timing of the work. I think he said during the winter, I think he'd want a drop dead date where he doesn't do any work beyond that date into the growing season. Length, width, and depth of the actual runnel itself, the method that he uses, the tools that they're going to use. If he can list the tools right now, we could put that as one of the conditions. Access to the site, how he's going to get there, number of workers he has on the site. I mean, I'm just thinking of all these things we could put with condition. Limit it to the 3 sites that he's proposed, and maybe we could add a reporting condition in there where he'd give us the reports like we could ask for already.
Yeah.
I think it would be the same thing we list for a notice of intent. So I don't know if it's a disservice by giving them a negative determination that they might appeal, or notice of intent with the same conditions they might appeal. So it's half a dozen.
Tough one. Here, hold on a second, Bill. Kevin, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I was, it might be, I apologize, the terminology is not coming to my head, but when you have like a court case where they have, they previously didn't have any comments, and then we have it coming forth again. Like, you didn't have any comments before, so we did the same thing because it's a similar project. If we did a negative determination, that's consistent with what we did before. And if they have comments, be like, hey, we're basing it on the previous project that you didn't have comments for. So I think it'd be okay, and it would allow them to move forward with a project that I think we're all in agreement on, that is for the greater good of the salt marsh.
I think this is also less work than in the previous RDA. I think it's just less.
All right. So Greg, just to turn it back to you for a moment, as Kevin said, I don't think you're hearing any back talk from us. You're hearing, curiosity and interest, but we recently had DEP appeal a couple of our decisions because we did not ask for enough information, essentially. And so this is an information-heavy project, and we would be preventing ourselves from getting more information about it in the future, right? And that would be the kind of thing that would trigger the review and the, stretching out your regulatory timeline from something manageable to perhaps something less manageable. So in a manner of speaking, I think depending on which bet you want to take, we're okay with that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I really appreciate the position that you all are in. I think maybe the term Kevin was referring to is setting precedent, maybe, and that's certainly how I ended up here on this call under an RDA, because A, I think it's de minimis, and B, it had no pushback, and C, as Bill mentioned, that previous RDA from 2016 was to do 2 runnels, ditch remediation, Phragmites control. That might have been it, but I mean, it was a big enchilada, and at that time, with arguably an unproven approach, which I feel very comfortable is an approved approach. That said, I'm not super interested in getting into the mud on any of this and pissing anybody off, because that's not really, certainly don't try to do that on a daily basis. I like to avoid that. So I am on the fence. I'd love to see this move forward under the RDA. I did feel that I got sufficient feedback from Rachel that she would not, I'm trying to recall the exact term, interfere, or no, it may not have been the word, if the town, intervene, if the town felt they were comfortable with it. But that doesn't mean that wouldn't happen. So I don't know. I looks like Nancy has a comment that she could maybe help us out here, right? Unless that's to me. Nancy has her hand raised. She could clarify that.
All right,
muted.
Go ahead and unmute. Yeah.
And she's
No.
Oh, audio, Nancy.
And make sure she introduces herself too.
Oh, yeah, that too. Well, when we can hear her. Nothing.
Can you put it in the chat?
We don't have a chat.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Really?
The municipalities, we don't have
I
a
use
chat.
it if we do.
Or a text. Yeah, I mean, Nancy's a key partner here in all this, you know, I mean, I'm the applicant, but it's, you know, we need to hear from Nancy on this.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, you know, I do support your position about the RDA. You know, I'm just a little nervous, right? Like, I don't want you guys to get thrown under the regulatory bus over something that's just tiny, relatively speaking. You know, Nancy, you good?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
All right. All right. So Nancy, just before you get in, right, just give us the introduction for the viewers at home.
Okay.
Who are you?
I'm Nancy Powell. I'm the wildlife biologist at Parker River Refuge. And as Greg says, you know, he's been working with me for the last couple of years on this project. I'm not really a partner on this project. I'm mostly doing kind of permitting and review like you guys are. So because the project is happening on the refuge, I'm going through the refuge approval process. And as part of that, we've been having a lot of discussions about permitting. So I think Greg said that he did email Rachel Free a copy of the RDA. As you guys know, DEP and CZM has been very interested in a lot of these restoration projects that the refuge and trustees have been doing. There's a lot of eyes on it, and we've been working very hard with them to build kind of that relationship. So for me, I just wanted to make sure that DEP had a chance to comment. If they choose not to, that's great. And Greg can get his RDA. I've also requested that Greg check with the Army Corps of Engineers, because in the past they have stepped in on these kind of projects because you're connecting to interjurisdictional waters because the pool is isolated and now it will be connected to the sound.
Yeah. You know, I think Nancy just raised the point that we haven't brought up yet that might be the solution to this, which I think, Greg, you might actually want to run an NOI, because that goes to DEP and it gives DEP the chance to respond with formal comment. And the RDA, in a manner of speaking, you know, is a handshake agreement, right? And it doesn't give DEP that chance to comment before implementation. And I'm not saying that I think this reaches where you need an NOI, but the sort of increased level of formality and offering yourself up for scrutiny, might shorten your calendar in many ways. And so,
yeah. You know, I agree. It just feels like a safer bet to not put anybody in a position. Nancy actually really helped out with comments in when I prepared the attachment to make sure that some of the key questions got answered, that we determine, do we know what success is? Do we know what the criteria are? And so I think a lot of that preparation for the attachment would serve me and the project well, to put that in front of DEP to say, you know, a lot of the information is here. Hopefully all of it's there. And I'm not against it. I would prefer an RDA and off we go, but I'm not alone here in this project. Yeah. Okay.
So if what we can do, if you want, we can punt on this. Like, we don't have to close this tonight. You could, have a think, in a manner of speaking, and have some other conversations. I know the NOI is ridiculous overkill for the context of, 30 linear feet. But then again, it will cover all your bases. And, yeah, I don't like seeing this.
I like a slam dunk instead of a roll of the dice. So,
Yeah.
that I get where you're coming from. It would be nice to table it to see if I can, get direct comments from Rachel, to be able to come back to. I don't know if you can continue an RDA. I don't really know
Sure.
the process, but
We can.
We can do it.
because if I were to actually get those comments back and be able to share them in writing, then I would have the confidence to either feel comfortable asking for an RDA decision versus doing the work for the NOI. I'm not afraid of the work for the NOI, but I still, either way, I think it's a good opportunity to get those comments that, sooner than later.
Yeah. Anybody else on the board want to throw in an opinion on this one? No? Okay. Do we have anybody else here for this? Any public? Anybody else? Any other comments? No? Okay, good. Just checking. Well then, yeah, let's have a motion to continue this to the 5th.
Motion to continue.
Thank you, Peter.
Seconded.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, so we'll do our roll call. Bill Lord. Great. Daniel.
Yes.
Kevin. And Peter.
Yes.
And I will also vote in the affirmative. And so, yeah, Greg, I think just to reiterate something you probably heard like 5 times already, I don't think you're hearing any concern from us. We're all supportive of the effort and the idea, and wish you the best. And in the spirit of wishing you the best, we're going to try to make sure that you don't get caught up in a tangled web of differing opinions.
I like that. That feels pretty good. I appreciate all the comments.
In that case, then good luck. We hope we'll hear back from you on the 5th with lots of emails from DEP and various and sundry other regulatory bodies telling us that we're wasting their time by sending you to them.
That would be great. I look forward to sending you something like that. All right.
All right. And thank you again for the presentation. As Peter said, that was well done.
My pleasure. Thank you guys, and sorry to take so much of your time tonight. I'll be back in touch.
No, it's great.
All right. Very good.
All right. Thanks again. Let's move on then to our next item. What are we up to? Where'd my agenda go? I had it. There it is. Next item on the agenda, we have Ryan and Stephanie Kelly at 6 Marshmeadow Lane, DEP numbers still to be determined. A continued NOI for construction of a 2-family dwelling and grading. All right. Who is here for the Kellys?
Good evening. My name is Bob Grassel from Engineering Land Services. This is a continuation of a notice of intent to construct a single building, a 2-family dwelling, 6-bedroom with town water and a sanitary disposal system. Since the last meeting, we have obtained a DEP number of 050-1340, and we got approval today from the Board of Health for the septic system. During the site walk Sunday, I showed Mission the house corners, the leaching area corners, and the infiltration corners. There was a suggestion by one of the members saying during construction we could have an extra stockpile of silt sock on site just in case there was any. erosion control breakouts or something like that. I'm here for any questions. Most of the questions were answered during the site. And just see if anybody had any other thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Let's go. New on your mind after our site walk?
Is that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just anything on your mind you want to update with
Okay,
after
yeah.
the site walk?
Yeah. I think the last meeting we had discussed a couple of items that we were looking to get on the plan, I believe, or at least as part of the conditions. I think one of them, I'm going to share my screen real quick if I can.
It's definitely done.
Hey, Brian, while Bill Holt is bringing up his screen share, would you mind muting yourself between when you talk? Because there's other sound, ambient sound around you that keeps cutting the speaker out, and it's a little harder to follow. So if you wouldn't mind, Brian, hitting mute on yourself when you're not talking.
So, Kevin, that's funny because I was wondering which of you it was doing. So I don't know what sound is in the house at the moment. I'm talking on my phone, so maybe there's a program on in the background. So I'll dig around a little bit and see if I can find something. But I don't know. I had the same thought you did. Where's that noise coming from?
Sometimes if you're using your phone as audio, if you have to mute your computer or you have to mute the computer so the phone takes all the volume so it doesn't get an echo. No.
I'm having trouble sharing my screen, so hold on a second.
That's okay. We can work through two tech issues at the same time. All right. So if I mute myself on.
No, we can't hear you when you mute the computer. So I don't think you're actually using your phone as audio.
No, my phone, I've got it linked into the Zoom meeting. So when I mute on the screen, it'll mute the phone.
Oh.
So even though I've got it, yeah, it's linked in tight.
I think that's beyond it.
Is someone else sharing?
You want me to pull it up, Bill, or?
Yeah, I guess I can't seem to call it up. I don't know why.
Well, let's keep our ear on it, Kevin, because I don't see it, and there's nothing in this room around here but me, as far as I know.
Yeah, I was just going by the highlight. Whenever it cuts out, it's highlighting your screen. So
can you see that, Bill?
It's not that big of a deal. I can still make out what people are saying, but
no, I agree. That was rude and annoying. So
I don't see anything.
Nobody likes it.
Can you see my screen?
I cannot. Does anyone else see it?
Try it again, Bob. I just made you a co-host.
Okay, do you want me to click on share screen again? Because I can see it on my computer. Okay.
Well, you might need to exit out and go back in because if you're the co-host for the program to catch up.
Okay, I'll try that now. How's that?
You're coming.
Is that better?
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, any particular area, Bill, or?
Yeah, I'll try to explain it as we. So we talked about demarcating the limit of work, and it looks like the limit of work is within the buffer zone is. If you can up a little bit to the top of the screen.
Okay, sure. Right there.
Yeah. It looks like if we started at the bend in the erosion control, it's at the north side of the house, right? Okay. Yeah, right in there.
Yeah.
If you marked the limit of work from there, following the hay bales down to the corner, sort of mark each of these bends and the bend beyond the infiltrators.
Yeah.
And halfway on that erosion control line.
Yeah.
And you go more southwest and you get to bend
Right.
again, follow that erosion control to the end of the erosion controls, and then parallel to the east side of the septic system. About
Okay,
20
like this.
off the septic,
Okay,
and basically to the end of the septic system. That would mark, for the most part, the areas that are in the buffer zone.
on this side of the septic system, you're saying?
Yeah, yep, on the east side.
Well,
about
that's
20 feet
going
off.
uphill, so I doubt I'd get any erosion control.
No, not erosion control. This is
Oh,
like
limit of work.
the permanent demarcation of the limit of work.
Okay, yeah,
I mean, I don't know what the commission is entertaining as far as what to place, a fence or just posts or just like a placard or a sign that they are willing
yeah, I
to.
thought that regulation wasn't in effect yet.
It's not, but I know it was discussed, so I don't know if they're not gonna require that or not. I'm just asking if they're gonna require some kind of demarcation if they do want town.
I did agree at the site walk to put some silt fence around the isolated area right here. So when I'm grading, nothing will, fill that little pocket in.
Yep, that was one of the other comments I had was to put erosion control around the IBW.
Yeah,
think-
something like that.
Yeah, that was really all that I had as far as what I recall from the last meeting as in terms of what we were looking for as some of the conditions. Otherwise, I have no other comments. So I know I did talk to Deb Rogers today, the Board of Health, and she did approve the plans today.
Yes, I did talk to her also.
Yep.
Yes.
So I can confirm that. That's all I have. I don't know if there's any questions from any other comments from the commission. So I'll hand it back to Brian.
Yeah, let's go around the horn. Bill Lloyd, anything on your mind? Okay. Daniel?
The sidewalk sort of cleared up most of my concerns, and I'm good.
Okay. Kevin?
I missed the site walk, but I don't think I have any questions. I'm good.
Okay. Peter?
No, my apologies to the other commissioners for not being at the sidewalk. No questions.
Okay. Mary?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. I think that, in general, I'm happy with the plan. Just a couple quick questions. One is the infiltrator required by anything? Or is that, are you proposing that as additional? Was that?
That's just additional for roof runoff.
Right.
Just to recharge the groundwater. That's all.
Yep, I understand why. I just was wondering if it was being triggered by, there's no stormwater regs that apply.
No,
under
we're
this
not. We're a single
specifically.
family lot, and we're not commercial or anything like
Sure,
that.
sure.
It's just something that we're proposing.
Yep, okay. Just wanted to clarify that. I think that using the erosion control barrier that is shown as the permanent limit of work, I think that works for me. The only other comment is the access road sort of to the septic system that needs to be constructed. Introducing a lot of foreign fill material you have to bring in some fill, I understand, to get access for equipment to get to the leach field. But if we could use on-site material as much as possible for that and not bring in Linpack or other material that is foreign and that will potentially generate a lot of potential for invasive species and things once it's in place, that would be preferable. And I don't know if that's practical with the amount of material that you will be generating, but I think for the excavation for the slab, hopefully there'd be enough material that you could do that. And that if there is any foreign material brought in for that purpose, that it be removed.
That's typically what contractors do. They build a road to put that leaching area in, and as they work their way out, they lumen seed it and then scrape it as they're working their way out.
Yeah, so maybe if they use some kind of geotextile fabric below the fill so that you can get that material and it's separate from the native topsoil, that would be okay. Just that
okay.
material is always generates a problem. And that's an area that's going to be, more or less undisturbed. So those are my
And
only
luckily, we're
comments.
outside the 100-foot buffer, so we're,
True. True. Yep.
Yeah. I want to sort of tag on to Mary's comment. Oh, sorry, Mary, are you done? Was it you good?
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
I just want to tag on to Mary's comment a little bit. If you guys are going over there anyway, and you're doing that work, and you've got to lay a line from the house to the septic, can we move the roof infiltration to be close over towards the septic and just put that pipe, if you're going to trench something and put a pipe down to the septic, and we put a pipe down to the roof drain and put the roof over there. And then you don't have to have that infiltration thing sort of down the far side of that cliff. And that's one less work area.
That was the design of it, to make sure when we recharge the groundwater that it would flow towards the wetland naturally. I didn't want it near the septic system to, possibly, add additional water to the septic system or raise the groundwater table. So that's why we put it there.
Okay. I follow the logic. I get the what you're saying. But after seeing the site, and Ben isn't there, but Ben, Mary, and I have spent a lot of time over by that isolated wetland, and it seems like it drains fairly well. It doesn't seem to be, the issue you raise, while valid. My instinct from the field visit is that maybe it's less of an issue. But Mary, feel the kick in here. On the pro con of just pulling that roof device away and keeping that out of the buffer and punting that out into the space where the the work road is going to go anyway.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying in terms of limiting the amount of work that's close to the actual jurisdictional wetland, but not at the expense of the function of the septic system if it's going to cause problems with.
Yeah, I really don't like it near the septic system.
Yeah.
That's just, it's a possibility of raising the groundwater there, and with that amount of roof runoff, being at 48, units of infiltrators, I personally believe it's at a spot where we're going to do step downs too. It's just not going to be a level one. We're going to step each layer down. So
I don't mind that going in the other location if it's a huge problem. It was really up to trusting Bob, and I see your point of kind of one area versus the other. But I think where it is right now, it's obviously closer to the house, and that's where the water would be going. So I see either way.
The other option is dry wells or something, but you don't. The structure isn't needed, so we could say that it isn't required at all.
Okay.
That's the other option. It's not required by regulation or anything.
It's just less conflict if I have tracing. If we put it near, say, I put it right in this area. Right.
You don't have gutters discharging directly to the wetland or something. You have a way of controlling it.
These will all be connected, and then there's on the detail, there's just in case it did flow over, there's an emergency spill out spout.
We have a plan.
If you want it in somewhere in here, we could put it in here, but then again, I don't want that water going towards the septic system.
We have a plan for doing a holding tank below, right near where the other holding tank is, and that would be for irrigation water. So we are catching some of the gutter water. So it depends on the volume of what's moving on. If we don't need it and we can combine the holding tank with that runoff, kind of sluice way, then I'm fine with not even having it.
Thanks, Ryan, for the flexibility. So Bob, to address your point about the water table, we were sort of having a discussion to that effect out there with that rain that we had and the snow and the fact that the boundary of the pool was far beyond the boundary of the wetland flag.
Not its normal condition. Yes, I agree with
right.
that.
And where the proposed septic would go, and then the separation between the septic and the ground, and how far that was from the high level of the pool.
Mhm.
I feel like you're still in safe territory, from a groundwater thing, right? Because of that high water, to get up to where you would go, you probably need, a 6-inch event to even get close to the septic.
Yeah, because the septic system would be raised. So I just didn't want any more water going towards the septic or that isolated wetland. That's why we put it there.
Good instinct. I'm down with the instinct. I'm absolutely behind you on that first instinct. Absolutely.
We actually think about these things when we design them. So, I mean, that's our reasoning why we put that there.
So
yeah,
we have to do away with the infiltrator and we just do the catchment with whatever kind of rainwater thing. I'm fine with kind of cutting back one step on all that.
All right. So then, Bob, do you and Ryan kind of want to have a chat outside of this?
Well, I mean, will the plan get approved tonight with the infiltrators as they are now, or we have an option to move them towards the proposed temporary soil stockpile somewhere right in here? Is that where you?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be fine.
I'm fine with where it is. If you're looking for a straw poll.
Brian, I think a good way to handle this would be that the infiltrator is okay where it is, or if decided, moving it further away, but not closer to the buffer zone, I think would be maybe a way of handling it as conditions so we can approve this tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, I follow you, Kev. If we condition it as saying like plan as is approved, but if you choose to move it to the proposed stockpile area, that also has been discussed and approved, like some variation on that. I feel like we would be, above grade with our language there.
Okay. So give us an option to move the infiltrator as proposed to the proposed soil stockpile area.
Because I would agree with like your observation, Bob, was good, and I agree with it. And then just seeing the puddle that the isolated wetland is at a high level, and then talking about the work road, you got to do the disturbance anyway, and then you can just cut down one disturbance area and backfill with the other. I mean, you get it, obviously.
Okay.
Does Bill, does that sound like something that you could condition that would work? Bill Holt?
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I can definitely word it that way. I actually wrote down what we were saying, and we can write up a condition that would give them the option to move it.
Okay.
Can I go back a little bit? Because I know some of you said that we may not even need it with the current plan. I would just rather not even disturb it and just not even plan on doing it and just have the catchment with whatever water management on the other side.
Yeah, Ryan, that one I'm going to leave more to Bob. I'm assuming that he put the roof drain in there for a reason.
Yes, we did. Yeah. It's a big building.
I'm presuming, yeah. So
it's
I'm
90 by 60.
It's more useful to have it than not. And so just saying, like, if you guys, like I said, you've got to run a trench anyway, and you just sort of stack your impact on top of each other a little bit without obviously overflowing the septic. Anyway, yeah. So Bill Holt, you can write that up, give them a choice. And then, Bob, when you get out and do the installation of the septic, you can see the site as it's constructed, and perhaps choose to put it over there if it feels good and meets the the specs. Because again, your point is solid, and maybe that puddle will look bigger in a different rain event, and maybe there's a good reason to to stick to it as you initially envisioned. But yeah,
Thank you for your
other
comments.
than that,
Yes, thank you.
other than that, I think Bill Holt just look for some language to address Mary's point, about the more natural we can keep that work road, the better. Scrubbing the tires or washing the tires or any of that stuff, or if they can use downed logs and I don't know, balance beams across.
I appreciate the sentiment. I believe that's out of our jurisdiction because it's well.
Yes, but we can also ask nicely. But you're right about the condition part.
Yeah.
That would not be a valid condition. I overran there a little bit. Anyway, whatever. You get the idea, Bob.
Can we make it a condition that the erosion control barrier would serve as the limit of work and that it be marked in the field according to a plan that the applicant provides, prior to issuance of a certificate of compliance or something, so that they have some options about how they want to mark that? I know that they didn't necessarily want to have a fence, and there are lots of different ways of doing it, but I think if they present a plan that just identifies that limit of work somehow in the field that prevents future encroachment, that we can give them some flexibility in how to do that. If that.
So I would, this is like a long-term, like me forever. And there's very likely never going to be someone else until 80 plus years from now. And I would very strongly not want to put any marcation, any fence, any signage, anything. The beauty of the land and having that fade into the wetland is the beauty. And I would hate to detract from that in any way.
So then we'll just have to ensure that when a certificate of compliance is issued, that limit of work has been respected. So that would be
Absolutely.
That would be your burden. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, Mary, I also put that note on there saying proposed silt temporary erosion control and in parentheses limit of work. So
okay. Great.
We'll stick with that line to no further activity past that line.
Yep.
Mary, help me out here. I'm just thinking about Kevin's comment about jurisdictional stuff, because if we're dealing with invasives in a non-wetland space that we're on a project site, where's that fall? I forget. That's a hazy gray area in my mind right now.
I'm not sure what the question is. I mean, you could only regulate the portion of the property that's within 100 feet of the wetland. So
right, but if we're regulating the work that goes into the, does that give us?
No.
Whatever. It's
it's the 100 feet. If you have something that you want to add about landscape plantings, not including any native, not including invasive species, that would be. We can do that. The portion of the landscaping that's in the buffer zone would not to include any non-native species or invasive species.
Right. And we usually do that, but that's not necessarily within the buffer space. It's not necessarily fully jurisdictional either. But
nope,
it's
it can only apply to the buffer zone. You can't apply it to other areas of the site.
All right. Well, let's keep moving, just because we're getting. At least I'm starting to get.
Yeah, it's a long night.
So I would make a motion, if it's appropriate, to approve the plan and issue an order of conditions subject to the conditions that were previously stated.
Seconded.
Excellent. All right. Roll call. Bill Lord. Good. Daniel.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
And Peter.
Yes.
And I will also vote in the affirmative. All right. Thank you, Bob. Thank you,
very
Ryan.
much.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Luck.
Thank you.
All right, so next up we have Kevin Whitney of KNR Construction Company, LLC at 84 Boston Road, DEP number 050-1337. A continued NOI to construct a 7,400 square foot building with 2 paved access driveways, paved parking, and access on 3 sides of the building, and a gravel storage area to the rear and side of the building. All right, so who's here for these guys? Chris, is this you?
I'm here. Yep, Chris York from Millennium Engineering.
All right.
If I can have I have my desktop computer too here. If I can have that as the co-host, I can share the screen, share the plans. Can someone have I have the desktop computer as well as my iPad. I'm using the desktop, if I can use that to share.
So, Bill,
Is that Gretchen at the Chris York desktop?
Yep, that's the one.
I don't know if she's still here.
All right, well, maybe while Gretchen's figuring that out and you're waiting to boot up, Bill Holt, anything new on your end?
I was going to actually wait after I heard Chris York's presentation because we have some comments, but I think he might go over them, so I don't want to be repetitive. So I'm trying to actually ask Gretchen to try to unlock my screen. I think that I'm being blocked by the administrator. I can't share my screen, which is why I had a problem. So,
so I guess in the meantime, we had a site walk a few weeks ago. In the meantime, we got comments back from Joe Sawatka. Yeah, there we go.
Hey, there it is.
All right. So we got comments back from Joe. These updated plans incorporate his changes. There weren't a whole lot of plan changes for his comments. One of the comments from the last hearing we had was someone had brought up wanting some additional buffer plantings behind the proposed wall out back here. So I met with Mark West, who flagged the wetlands, and you met on site, and he put together a planting list on the screen here of some arrowwoods and dogwoods and pepper bushes kind of scattered throughout this area behind the wall. Other than that, I can kind of hand it back to the commission and take any questions and go from there, I guess.
Okay. Let's go to Bill Holt, just because he alluded to some things on his mind.
Okay. Let me see if I can share my screen now, maybe.
Well, if you can't, you can tell Chris to drive. He can move the screen around, right?
Yeah, mine's not working. It's all right. All right. So they did at the site walk. We noticed an off-site wetlands on the south side of Boston Road, southeast side of Boston Road. They did add that. It actually was flagged by number 75 Boston Road, and they added those flags. I believe they surveyed them and added them. And they added the 100-foot buffer also, so there's an additional buffer on that side.
Yes,
I asked them to do. They added the buffer area impact summary on sheet C3. I think it's up in the top right corner. If you can go up to that area. And it basically says that there's a total buffer disturbance impact of 59,000 square feet. It works out to be about 60% of the lot area. From 0 to 50, they had 23,500 square feet of disturbance in the buffer, which is about 40% of the total disturbance. And from 50 to 100 is 35,500, which is about 60% of the total disturbance. I think Ben had asked for that summary, which they did add to the plans. I know one of Joe's comments was access to the constructed wetlands, and on the right-hand side of the property, or the northeast side of the property, there's a way to actually get down past the wall and get into the constructed wetland areas to maintain it. I don't know if that should be an easement, or I assume this will be maintained by the owner, but I'm not sure if the town would like an easement on that or not. You'd ask the planning board. The town needs an easement to be able to access it in case it needs to go in there for anything. I noticed the wall on the northeast side of the property along Boston Road has been eliminated. I think they did some regrading, some plantings up there, and the proposed wall was no longer shown. I think Joe had a comment about that on the grading line, I believe.
Yeah, I took a look at that a little more. The wall wasn't needed because this ledge outcrop is going to come out and it'll be much lower over here than it is now. So this wall wasn't needed.
And the DEP comments, they wanted to address the runoff coming off the southerly access drive, which was the very south corner edge of the property. I guess originally it's been designed to flow about that high spot that he has his marker over down towards Boston Road, and that water was not being caught, but they added a catch basin at that southerly drive access to catch and treat the runoff, and it goes back into the treatment system and back out to the constructed wetlands. DEP made a comment about the pre and post watersheds. I don't know if they understood quite how they were described in the stormwater management document, but I reviewed those, and the pre and post watersheds are equal, which they should be in the area. So, and they break them up a little differently when they do the post. Have part of the subcatchment go into each of the catch basins. So you want to know how much water is going into these catch basins to make sure it's going to work properly, the whole system. So if you add them all the catch basins, all the catch basins up, they add up, the post and the pre add up to the same amount. And there was no issue there really. I don't know if the DEP understood that comment, but
I don't think they did.
Yeah, I think that it was something they didn't follow. They also add a comment on the soil types, the SCS hydrohydraulic soil group types, C and D soils, which are poor permeability and recharge and infiltration is not usually warranted in that type of soil. They asked where that soil was. The applicant provided a Soil Conservation Service soil map, which shows the whole area as being hydrohydraulic soil groups C and D soils. So it's the whole site. There's no delineation or separation between the C and D soils. They asked for a TSS chart demonstrating 85% total suspended soil removal, which they provided. Picked a few of the constructed wetland details. The 4-foot deep water pool was, I think, a little less than 4 feet before, and now it's the 4 feet. And they have a 10-foot safety shelf, which was required under that design. They asked for a water budget demonstrating continuous supply of water to the constructed wetlands. I didn't see that in the stormwater report, so I don't know if you provided that. If you do have it, if you could send a copy of it, that'd be great.
So
the O&M plan was. I'm sorry.
Did I send you? I responded to their comments. I may not have sent you my response to their letter.
I didn't see it. No, so
right.
You could send that over. That'd be good as well.
I'll get that over to you. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
I did notice that you did revise the O&M plan that includes all BMPs used. A couple of comments that Joe Sawaka made that I don't know if you addressed either. I was looking at the plans. He asked for required parking counts. I know it's not a DEP conservation jurisdiction, but if you need more parking, then it may affect the parking design layout. which would affect the drainage design. So I don't know if you answered that question for the planning board in terms of how much parking you need for this particular use.
Yeah,
If it satisfies it and you don't have to make any changes, I'm okay with that.
it didn't come up at the meeting, but ultimately he has 1 or 2 office workers in the building at all times, and that's really it. So we show more than enough parking. He doesn't anticipate any visitors. This is just a building for his
business operations.
Yeah. Most of his employees that are going to a job site go straight to the job site, so they're not going to leave cars behind generally. So,
I noticed
10 spaces. We have more than enough shown.
Okay. It talked about a walkway along the front of the building. I don't know if you need that. I see you parking right up against the building, but you do have openings or spots for the door opening. So there's spaces that are available for the doors to open and close and people to walk into the building. So if it is needed, it may change the parking and drainage design slightly.
Yeah.
That's my only comment.
I don't anticipate sidewalks out there. I mean, obviously it's a very low traffic area. You only anticipate a couple cars parked out there at a time, so I didn't propose any.
The only other comment I see is that you did correct the catch basin sump detail to a 4-foot depth as opposed to the 2-foot that you had showed. To get you 25% TSS removal. And so I think we covered most of the other revisions that was asked by DEP and by Joe. So again, the drainage design didn't change a whole lot from what was previously shown. He did move the oil and water separator to relocation, as I had mentioned in my previous review. And I think you also added a detail which was missing before, which is appropriate. Yep. So I'm okay with most of the changes. They seem to have addressed most of the concerns that I had and that Joe had. So I'm not going to speak for Joe. He may have other ones, but as far as what I saw for his review, it seems like you addressed most of the ones that would relate to drainage and conservation issues. So
So one thing I did add as part of the DEP comments was they wanted us to show some infiltration. So what I did was similar to what we did next door with the self-storage site. I show some roof drains on each side of the building. The downspouts will go into them. I show perforated pipe.
Okay.
So we'll get a little bit of infiltration. Ultimately, whatever doesn't infiltrate will continue into the drainage system.
Is there any stone around the perforated pipe, or is it just give you a little void space?
I can show some. I did not show any. I can show a little detail if you want to show on that.
Yeah, that might be appropriate.
Laid on pipe or they're surrounded by pipe.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that.
Okay. So I think I'm all set with, as far as I can see. I would like to get a copy of your response to DEP, though, just to have it in the file.
Yeah, I will send that over to you as soon as the meeting is over.
Okay, and I'll hand it back to Brian.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Let's go around the horn. Bill Lord, any follow-up? I see your mouth moving, Bill. I think you might be on mute. No. All right. Well, if you fix the audio, if it comes back, you chime in when you can. Daniel?
So I feel like I'm coming in late on this for some reason, but I'm just sort of wondering if we were ending up with a functional buffer zone with that wall being, looks to me like it's 20 feet from the wetland. And I just, it seems very close to me. The additional plantings, I mean, are they, is the area kind of an undisturbed buffer zone now? Maybe we walked it. I don't know why you'd want to disturb it by planting more stuff, but that's just me. As far as the wall goes, how much excavation is needed to place the wall there? How far, below grade do you have to go? Is the disturbance of installing that wall going to spread further towards the wetland? It looks like it's a linear wall, but it's like it must have some lean to it. I don't know how much horizontal space it actually takes up. This, if Chris, if you could kind of just explain how we're going to end up with a functional buffer zone behind that wall on the north-facing side.
Yeah, so as part of the construction of the wall, we'll probably lose some of the natural buffer. So I think that's why someone, I don't know who it was, but someone had recommended some additional buffer to kind of put back in what we take out ultimately. I can show a detail of the wall. It's just a typical shea concrete type of block wall. So that each step of the wall is about 24-inch wide, 24-inch deep stones. So I mean, there's probably a little bit of a lean to it. I mean, it should be pretty straight, but there'll be a little bit of a lean to it. It's so we got about 15 to 20 feet of buffer right now proposed. The symbol itself is about the width of what the wall would be. So it's still, the wall would be about 12 to 15 feet away from the edge of the wetlands. So we showed a proposed tree line that's kind of right up against the wetlands. That's why we're showing the new buffer plantings in there to help mitigate what we take out. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Well, it kind of does, but it's just,
it's a big wall too. Yeah, it's a
10 foot high. It's 10 foot high above grade.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's going to be dark back there. There's not going to be much sunlight. The shading will probably even go into the wetland.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan. It's a good observation. To keep on this topic, Chris, can we sort of bring, so the wall is functionally a retaining wall, right? Like that's what's supposed to, it's holding up the hillside that they're building on top of, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, and so is there a version of this where the hillside doesn't need the wall? How structurally functional is this versus how much of an insurance policy and, slightly decorative in a sense?
No, I'd say this wall is definitely more, it has more for structural purposes than decorative purposes. Okay. Like I said, it's a big wall. It's a big wall up there.
Okay. And then
we could grade it, try and grade it a little bit and make the wall a little smaller. Push the wall a little closer to the wetlands. And I could probably, in some spots, I can see if I can push, I can see if I can chop a few feet off of what we have for storage area too. That's
right. Just, to Bill's point from earlier, and, you were saying that you're really not going to have people here that often. And, it's the parking issues maybe aren't as strong as they might be otherwise. If there's an argument to build for sort of doing less to achieve the same thing, you know, I don't know if you've got that option on the table, you know, if it's really something there, but, you know, just to see if there's a way to address Dan's point from a technical perspective, that might be nice. But again, you know, I don't know enough about all the math involved to have an opinion on my own.
Brian, if I could, I think Mizawaka made the recommendation for the wall height, if I remember correctly. Was that right, Chris?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Was it Joe that had a concern and he wanted the height of the wall that it was, the peer review? Do I remember that correctly?
I don't think he had an issue with the wall height. I have to look through his comments again. He might have wanted us to just verify the tops and, you know, the grades I show on them to make sure they're right. I don't think he had an issue with the height of the wall necessarily. But as I can,
it might have been a recommendation. That's why, if I recall correctly.
Oh yeah, I'll look and see what he said again.
I think with the height, he wanted a structural engineer to sign it because of the height of it requires a structural signature, structural engineer review.
Yeah. Which is typical, yes.
Anyway, so Dan, what else is on your mind? Anything?
Nothing really, but it just seems unusual to me that the clearing line and the erosion control is right on the wetland line. I mean, that's just, you know, there's no breathing room here. And I think it will impact the way it's as designed. It may have some negative impacts to the wetland resource area. That's all I got.
That's fair. Thank you, Dan. Kevin, what's on your mind?
Dan kind of touched on a lot of the things I had on my mind. So, yeah, I don't have any additional comments, I don't think.
Okay. Mary?
Yep, reiterating Dan's point, I picked up on the same thing. It doesn't look like there is an erosion control boundary shown along that wetland line. At least it's not, I can't pick it out on my plan. I see the flagged wetland line, and I see what looks like clearing right to the edge of the wetland and then planting again over that. So it seems unnecessary. You don't need 20 feet for a construction area to install these block walls, especially if it can be installed from the upland side. So, and I think that it's really tight there, that there should be additional room there to provide additional buffer. I would agree with that. Couple other points. One was on the plan that I received yesterday or earlier today from Bill. There was a note between the dumpster pad and the back of the building that said it was proposed gravel. And I don't see that here. So I'm wondering, is all this parking area that's around the building, is that all that paved, or how much of it is paved? Just the limit around the building there that's shown. Okay.
So yeah, this is paved. Yep. It's if I go to the site plan, that kind of shows some dimensions.
Okay, there it is. Proposed gravel. Okay.
So,
yep.
40 foot, 40 feet of pavement and 30 feet, and then the rest is gravel.
Right. And then the further you move that wall upland, the lower it can be. So that's another reason to pull it back. And in my experience in contractor yards, when you have a big wall at the back of the site, stuff gets dumped over it all the time. So I don't know if there's a fence proposed on top of the wall or not, but there would need to be something to prevent people from just using it as an out of sight, out of mind dump site behind there. Also, it's because where the plantings are located makes it really hard to monitor and maintain, water them, or anything like that for any, any mitigation planting between the wetland edge and the back of the wall. And then on the constructed wetland itself, I just had a question about in the cross section, you use the water table or the water elevation, expected water elevation at 12, which is the existing grade at that location. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. How there you are. I think it says the pool elevation is 12.
Yep.
So that is the grade at presently an existing conditions at the basin. So you're expecting, I would have expected that you're intercepting a groundwater table that would be lower than 12.
Yeah, we'll be intercepting the groundwater table with the, with the swale that kind of runs through the middle of it. The micro pool will be several feet into
And the swale. So that is the swale going through the middle of it. But
yeah,
it's
these kind of, yeah, these dips, the swale.
So I'm trying to see what the elevation is of the wetland itself near there. It looks like it's around 12. Okay, so
around,
Yeah, 12, 13.
so there's a 12 contour that runs through
right through there. Okay.
here.
Mhm.
And then obviously it gets higher up here.
Mhm.
So
your water elevation might actually be lower than what you're showing there. So that's my main point is the proximity of the work to the wetland is obviously the biggest concern, and then whether or not that extent of clearing is required for the project if only a couple of people are going to be needing to park there. I know you need to turn vehicles around and you need space for that, but is the clearing the minimum necessary to accomplish that?
well, I mean, they'll also be storing some of their equipment on site, and so obviously
that's what that's for.
Yeah, more than just the workers on site. There'll be areas just for storing vehicles overnight.
Will there be loose storage of material like unconsolidated material like loam or stone or sand or anything like that on site?
Nope. According to them, nope. Just vehicles and some of their larger backhoes and whatnot that aren't in use, but no.
So no fill or anything like that. It's going to be stockpiled.
No stone, no fill, no stockpiled areas. Nope.
Okay. And where's this with the planning board? Has it been reviewed? Is it being reviewed?
We were there last week for the first time.
Okay.
So we'll be back again in January.
And are we expecting additional comments from Joe Sirwatka? Is he going to be issuing a final report on this, or what is that?
I expect we'll get a second letter from him. I mean, I would assume that 95% of the comments are addressed to him. There'll be probably a couple little odds and ends hanging around out there, but we'll get a second letter from him, I'm sure, in the coming weeks.
So it sounds like we're looking towards a continuance on this with some additional information needed.
Yeah, probably.
Can I ask a question?
Anything else on your mind, Mary?
That's it for now. Thanks.
Chris was
okay.
Asked if he could ask a question. I don't know if you heard that, Brian.
No, who?
Chris York, I believe, asked.
Yep, just to.
I missed that.
If we move the wall in the edge of the parking grading, 10 feet or so upslope, and to allow the natural buffer to remain, do you still want these additional buffer plantings, or can we get rid of those? Keep the natural buffer.
I think that'll be a fair discussion point.
Sorry. Say that again.
Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead, Mary.
I haven't seen the site, so I can't say for sure whether they're needed, but if it's an undisturbed buffer area now, then they may not be necessary.
Yeah, I would back that up as well. I think that it'd be an open point of discussion. It just depends on how much impact was had to determine how much restoration would be needed. So Chris, assuming, are you good, Mary?
Yes.
Okay, and Peter, actually, it's your turn now, not mine.
Planning, we just got this last Wednesday, so we're just starting our process, and we have a site walk, I think, on the 14th for the planning board for the site.
Okay. So I presume what you're telling me is you're going to hold off on this for a minute because you'll have your own crack at this through the other channels. All right.
Not even process.
So, Chris, the thing that I think I need from you might be a little unusual. I'm having a lot of trouble visualizing the usage of this lot the way that it's being proposed to us. And if there's a way for you to make a sheet with like, you know, if you could like get, I don't even know if you have these in the software for like trucks, where you can put the trucks or the backhoes or the piles of whatever is going to go on the site. Because, you know, the way I'm hearing it, it's that either you guys are going to, you know, this parcel will be used overnight all the time, and there's going to be, you know, something on every inch of pavement, or, you know, it's going to be empty during the day. There's nobody there. They don't really need anything. And so I'm not really sure why we need to clear all this space and put up the retaining wall and put in all of this stuff, you know. And if there is a way for you to put, you know, marks on the map and say, you know, this is where this vehicle is going to go, this is where this other thing is going to go, and sort of help me visualize the proposed usage, I think I might be in a better position to, you know, make more useful observations about the wall, the drainage, the vegetation, all of the other things. I just, you know, I'm really having trouble visualizing the usage of this lot after the proposed build out.
Okay. I can talk with the owner and kind of get an idea of what exactly they intend on having out there at night, after, you know, after the day's work is over, and where they intend on parking things. I can get a better idea of that and kind of show it on the plan.
Do they have an existing facility somewhere now?
It's a good question. Yes, somewhere. I don't. Do they have an address of Boxford, I believe? But I honestly, I don't know. It's a good question. I've never seen it. Certainly nothing to this extent. I'm guessing it's a much smaller operation they have now.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. I see you, Kevin.
I'm kind of jumping their, you know, order, but it pertains to what you just asked. And
no, don't worry about it.
My concern with what you piggybacking on what you were saying is, okay, they're the ones building out the site, but if they're only there for 2 years, who has the site afterwards? So what their intention of the site is, to me, is irrelevant. It's preventing future encroachment on the wetlands and things like that, whether it's them or somebody else, it doesn't matter. So what their intentions are, where vehicles are parked, to me is not a concern. It's more, how do we prevent any encroachment and make ourselves and the DEP and all that happy with our decisions.
Yeah, I take your point. I suppose what I meant more was, you know, they're proposing a lot of impact that takes up a lot of buffer zone, you know, that cuts into the no build line, you know, requires the retaining wall. And, you know, I'm not understanding the need for all of this stuff. And a lot of other projects we do, you know, I can visualize and understand where they're coming from and make comments, right? And in this case, you know, if like I would really like to cut down on the amount of disturbance in the buffer area, you know, like let's say back where they've got the dumpsters, you know, because the space between the dumpsters and the building seems really far, and I'm not really sure what's going on there and why it's so big. And so if I, was just given some kind of visual on which to sort of build up my understanding, I think I would feel more comfortable both making comments and then voting on a proposed course of action.
I can add to that.
Any more clear?
I can add to that a little bit. Part of the reason why we show so much in this area is because they'll have this southerly driveways that will be the driveway they use for the larger trucks to come in. And they're going to need a pretty decent amount of area for the trucks to turn around because they intend on backing the trucks into the building. So it's the site plan we submitted to the planning board shows a plan that has kind of turning movements for the trucks. So a big truck comes in and has to kind of turn around and kind of then back into the building. So it takes up a good amount of space out here. So that's why there's so much area out here that's being disturbed. But I can also find out what the intent is over here in terms of storage of vehicles or whatnot too.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And, certainly for me, hopefully for other people too, but at least for me, it would be helpful. All right. So, anybody else on this?
Do we know if this is going to be lit at night?
It will. That was one of the concerns that came up with the planning board last week. The plan we show right now shows building lights, and then we also showed some pole lights out in the parking in the storage area. But we're going to ultimately, I think, get rid of the lights out in the gravel area. Just kind of stick with lights on the building. Because they don't intend doing, once it gets dark, they're not out there. They're not going to be out there working it after dark, so they don't need a whole lot of light out there. The wall mounted lights will do the trick, I believe, to kind of keep the site lighted enough, but not too much.
So Mary, if I could, through the chair, we have a real big concern with lighting. Since the project contiguous to it has continued and an easement access road was recently created. If you're on Boston Road at night, you can see right down to Route 1 and it's well lit. And you can be on the marsh on the other side of where the hay is and you'll still see the light. So lighting is now kind of a big priority for us because it's gone haywire.
Okay, thanks.
Glad to hear that. With all of the migratory creatures that come through at night, that's obviously a big deal. What about the neighbors?
Yes, as some of the clearing that's already occurred on this lot within the buffer zone?
It's between.
Yeah,
it is in the front in Boston Road because they didn't show that off-site wetlands before, and when I authorized them to do the access road, that buffer was not there. So unfortunately, they did.
So they're in violation now. Okay.
I just lost my screen. Am I still on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hey, did you guys hear from the school next door?
That's trustees. I mean, Essex County Greenbelt that owns that property, and they're not
right. Well, Greenbelt has it, and what is it? Is that Merrowhawk that uses it?
It's the boat school. I forgot the name of it. Yes, they use the property for outdoor education purposes, but Essex County Greenbelt is the landowner.
Yeah, I mean,
know this. because that's my husband.
Yeah, that's something that's on my mind. I would really like to make an effort to make sure that we don't surprise them with anything in this regard, because, you know, if you're sending your kids to a nature school and having something like this right next door, would be throwing their business model under the bus.
They're
so to
aware.
speak.
They
Okay.
would have been notified as an abutter of the
Well,
project. So
the
they're
Greenbelt would have been, right? Not the school.
right, not the school.
Right. So like they may be wondering when they have a chance to come in, and maybe they're not getting the notifications. I don't know about their own communication style.
Yep.
And so I think,
Yeah, the applicant
Chris,
is required to notify them, so as they're not the landowner. So.
Right. But how does this work? Like, I suppose it would be Bill Holt. Do you mind maybe giving them a call and just telling them that this is going on? Because, from the regulatory perspective, the applicants have done their job. And just because Greenbelt perhaps hasn't, are we allowed to call neighbors and make sure that they can come? Is there anything saying that we can't do that?
And I can call them. Unfortunately, they don't really have any standing legally.
I think they must be aware that something's going on, Brian, because it's pretty obvious there's activity there and clearing, and it's the site is getting prepped for something. So.
Right. No, I get it and I agree. I just also don't want to sort of have an after the fact situation where people come in feeling like they've been left out somehow. And I know since we're continuing it anyway, we're not holding up the process. I'd like to try to be more inclusive rather than less, and let them talk to Greenbelt about, maybe their own internal things, but at least to, make sure they know the calendar and know where to get the Zoom link, to be in attendance and to, behave like a member of the public in a general way. I have no knowledge of whether or not they're in the loop or not.
Right.
So.
I 100% appreciate the sentiment, but I don't think legally that has any bearing on what we're doing.
No, right. Legally, there's no, it's not legal. There's no legal things at all. This would just be making sure that a known member of the public who will be impacted, we make an effort to include them. And I'm not asking that of the applicant. I'm just asking that of Bill. And I'm making sure that there's nothing in the regs that would prevent us from doing so.
Right. And I also worry precedent, anyway. Since we're continuing, maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I moved to continue this to the January, 5th meeting?
Yeah, January 5th, yeah.
Second that.
All right, let's do the roll call. Bill? I assume you're holding your thumb up. I can't see the screen. Daniel?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to vote in the affirmative as well. And now I think I'm going to cut out. I need to sort of turn off my computer and come back on again. So if one of you want to pick up, Kevin, I'm going to designate you as the guy to play co-chair since our normal co-chair is out. I'm going to turn this off and try to come back on again.
Okay.
Next items will be quick.
I'm just pulling it up.
Next item is
I had it up, but
you want me to read what it is? It's
yeah, go ahead, Bill.
It's David Mantee, 0 Pine Island Road, DEP number 050-1330, a continued notice of intent to construct the dock, pier, ramp, and floating dock within Salt Marsh Resource Area in ACEC. I was in contact with Mr. Mantee earlier this week, and he has requested a continuance until January 26th meeting. He will not be ready for the 5th, so they wanted to continue it for this second meeting in January.
What is the date for the second meeting in January?
January 26th.
January 26th. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to extend to the January 26th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, second from Peter. Let's see, Bill Lord. Got a thumbs up from Bill Lord. Dan Streeter.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
And that is a yes from me. Is 4. Oh, Mary.
Yes.
All right, that's a quorum. So move to January 26th meeting. Bill Holt, I apologize. For some reason, I'm having a hard time putting the agenda up. So if you don't mind.
I can read the next item as well. It's Justin Leonard, 3 Southern Boulevard on Plum Island, DEP number 050-13, not assigned. A continued notice meant to restore an existing small parking area. I was in contact with Mr. Leonard this week as well. He's requested a continuance also until the January 26th meeting.
All right,
I just have a question about that before we go to the continuance. Bill, is there any kind of, is this a notice of intent as a result of an enforcement order? Was there actually an enforcement order issued? And
There was not an enforcement order. It was before I got here. Doug had met with him and asked him to, he saw that what he was doing, he was working in the dune, trying to restore a parking spot. And Doug told him to stop and to file a notice of intent. So he did, and it's been going on since. And through our conversations with DEP, it basically said that we couldn't prove that there was a parking spot there. If there was, he lost it through time, and they would not probably have permitted it again. He has the requisite parking spots. He doesn't need any more. Can't get any more. He already has 2 or 3. So there was no reason for him to have another parking spot, and no way we could grant it. So it's going to turn into a restoration of the dune is what it's going to do. He has to resubmit the notice of intent with a plan sketch showing how he's going to restore the dune. Basically change his application from a small parking area to restoration of the dune.
So we may have to, at some point, take enforcement action with a date certain for getting a notice of intent, because he may be less motivated now to actually file the notice of intent. Yeah.
He is working with me, but yes, you know, I think if he doesn't come in on the 26th, we will definitely we can do something at that point. But kind of give him a little latitude right now. He really can't do too much over the winter anyway. So
I understand. So with that, I would make a motion to continue to the 26th.
Second.
Brian, are you back, or you want me to take it?
Am I back? Can you hear me? Am I okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Kevin, would you like to practice roll call? Would you like to be co-chair
Sure.
or vice chair?
Sure. I'll take care of it.
Ben would love to give up the job.
Right. Bill Lord. I feel like he can't even hear us. All right, we have a quorum without Bill Lord, so Daniel Streeter.
Yes.
Peter Pecos.
Yes.
Mary Reimer.
Yes.
Brian.
Absolutely.
All right, and affirmative for me as well. Brian, you can take it from here. I am done.
Kevin, you're a natural. All right, so then let's see. That brings us up to our certificates of compliance. We have one for David Elmale, 18 20th Street, DEP number 050271.
Yes.
I haven't seen a number that old in ever. The only thing written here is all work was completed 32 years ago. Bill, what's the story?
The This is a remnant COC that never got signed, order conditions that never got signed off on. They found it during the title research for its upcoming sale. They need to have it closed out to take care of it. What I did is use unfortunately, all our records have been lost due to getting wet in the storage facility. So all the records from file number 1000 back were destroyed due to getting wet and mold and mildew. And we had to petition to have those basically destroyed. And so we lost all our records. So I asked Doug what we do in this particular case, and he said, use the best available evidence you have, go out and take a look at the site, see if it's stabilized and all work's been complete and there's nothing new going on, which I did do that last week. Also used Google Earth from 95, which is as far back as you can go, to the present. Kind of reviewed the aerial photos as time went on. You can see that nothing from 95 had happened any differently. So the site is exactly the same as it was in 95 as it is now. So presuming all the work was done at 95 at that point, I would say that it's been completed, it's stabilized, and hopefully we can issue the order condition COC to close out this file.
Okay. I'm okay, with moving forward with this. It sounds like you did what you could do. The only thing maybe I would ask you to do, Bill Holt, would be maybe get in touch with the title researcher, since they obviously picked up on something that several others, I presume, haven't in the last 30 years. Maybe they also found the plans that go along with this, and just sort of restock the file cabinet. I mean,
I can reach out. I don't know. I don't know. I should ask Alicia. Is it possible to tap into the EP files? I don't know if they have records back that far as well. I'm not sure.
No, but I mean, if they recorded this at that date, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that it's a fairly unusual move to have, all this stuff recorded and actually done right, in the early 90s and late 80s. A lot of towns I know of, there are pretty big holes where they asked people to actually record things and never followed up with it. And so if this was recorded, maybe other stuff is.
I actually looked for the plans and I didn't see any plans filed for this site.
And chances are 32 years ago, the quality of the plans might not have been particularly useful either. So I think we put everybody out of their misery. Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's make a motion to approve. And Kevin seconded it. Great. All right, let's go around the horn. Bill Lord. All right, Daniel. Daniel, you're muted, but you're good. I got you. Kevin.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
All right, and I'm voting affirmative. So Bill Holt, that's good to go.
I really thank you.
And then, okay, I was about to check, and I presume you're the homeowner involved in this one.
Right. That is right.
All right, excellent. Well, you're all set. Bill Holt, do you want to sort of give him the script on timelines and when he can expect to have his paperwork?
I'm hoping to process it before Thursday. I don't think there's any timeline for this. No appeal period for this, is there? I don't believe so.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to issue that.
I just say that all the time. So I said it this time too.
I think 32 years is long enough.
So I'll be issuing that on Thursday, before Thursday. I'm on vacation next week, so I want to get it out before then.
Great. Sounds perfect.
Thanks a lot.
Good luck.
And then we have next up, there are no extension permits. There are no emergency certificates. There's no reissuances. We have a reminder that in addition to the January 5th meeting, we're going to have a special meeting for the 14th Street access on January 19th, which I presume, Mary, you're just going to take a pass and, have a nice regular dinner. Maybe watch some TV. And that is it on our agenda for this evening. Bill, before we go, are there any sort of office updates, any last minute things that came up that you'd like to share?
Nothing most recent. I sent out the email regarding the subcommittee. I'm not too sure how you guys are going to proceed with that. If you do have meetings under the subcommittee, you have to have them advertised, not advertised, but posted, and has to be open. So it'd have to be like a regular meeting, essentially.
Question, Bill.
Yes,
if
Peter.
the subcommittee is made up of two members, if the subcommittee is 2 members, then it can function correctly? Correct with you?
It's a good question. I don't know. I read the AG's basically review of the open meeting law, and it says it said a sub quorum amount of members in a subcommittee cannot operate outside of an open meeting. So, and I would say 2 is a sub quorum and 3 is also, but so I don't know if in fact they have to still have it be an open meeting, regular posted meeting, and have it 72 hours posted, have it open to the public to be able to at least view it. They don't necessarily have to participate, but they have to be able to observe the meeting and watch it. So
if a chair and a vice chair meet with you, there's no need for posting of a meeting. You guys can meet. 3 people could meet you, one of the 3.
Yeah.
So if your subcommittee was trimmed down to 2 people that met with you, they could function independently, then report back to this board.
I could ask the question. I'm not really sure, but it seems like it would be possible. Yes.
Yeah, I think 3 is a trigger.
Yeah. Okay.
3 board members.
I'll make that inquiry with Tracy and the town council and see if that in fact is the case. If it is, we could do that. We could I guess we already have 3 members, so I have to probably vote again on the 5th. I'm not sure how this is going to work. Like, I also can't do the Google Docs. The Google Docs is too risky that communication could happen amongst the members. So
things either. So I understood that part. Like, that makes sense.
Mary, when we spoke of potential dates, I believe you said the 16th was an option.
Yep.
Do you want to just call that now? And while Bill Holt is sort of working out some of the details, do we want to ask Gretchen to post something for us on the 16th from 6 to 7 p.m. and we'll tell Ben?
It's okay with me. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, Gretchen, if you can sort that out, and it'll just be a 1 topic, 1 item, 1 hour on the 16th, and then we can at least have something in this vein rolling, because I presume that by the time Bill asks his question and he receives his answer, it'll be January 5th before we hear the update. And at least by posting something this month, we can keep our momentum. And,
so December 16th at 7 or 6?
At 6.
6?
Yeah.
6 to 9 or
6 to 7. We're going to do 1 hour. Exactly.
6 to 7.
January or December?
December.
Okay.
Is that for the whole board?
I'll post that. I'll send it out tomorrow for you guys to review it, and then you can let me know, and I'll have it posted on the website.
Thanks, Gretchen.
Yep.
Thank you.
I had just one other item. I don't know if it's on the it's not on the agenda, but the guidance document that you had drafted regarding the ACEC and docs. I have some thoughts about that, and I wondered if we could postpone posting it on the website until I had a chance to talk to Brian or someone or Bill a little further about that, because I think there might need to be some corrections to it.
Interesting. Mary, I don't know what you know or don't know about that, but the gist of it was that
You get a lot of talks and ACCs. Yeah.
Okay,
I spoke with Ben about why it was formed and everything. I understand what you're trying to do. I just think that some of the language is incorrect and we need to correct it before posting. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yep.
I mean, we don't have a doc coming in that we know about, and this isn't exactly the season for submitting doc paperwork anyway. So, I think we've got the time to wait on it.
I don't know how much this matters, but I agree with waiting till Mary's input is involved, because as far as knowledge is concerned, I feel like Mary brings a wealth of knowledge to this board, and having her input is crucial to that being successful.
Yeah, I think I was having a hard time. I know what you were trying to do, and the way it was worded made it a little bit more confusing. So I think we can clarify a few things and maybe still make it work. So
yeah,
good. Thanks.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think if you and Ben basically agree on it, the rest of us are going to go along with whatever you two decide. Because Ben's been sort of leading the charge, and we've all just let him, in a manner of speaking.
Right. Okay.
And that wouldn't be an open meeting thing, right? If you and Ben just figure it out.
I don't know how that works.
I think 2 members is fine.
2 members is okay.
I think so.
Well, double check on that before I get in touch with Ben about it.
I will definitely do that.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, you guys figure it out, assuming you can, and we'll just agree with you. No big deal.
It may just have to be, emails to Bill, which he then forwards to Ben or something. So.
Okay. And then Bill Holt, did town council had a look at what you wrote too, right? So you're just doing some copy paste off council?
Yep. I sent it. I sent it to Tracy. She sent it to Lisa Mead, town council, and she did some edits and then sent it back. So there was some minor edits that she made, but that is the version that she edited. Is what?
Okay.
Sent out.
So Bill Holt, could you send Mary the version that has the track changes from Lisa?
I think I can. Yep. I think I still have it. Yep.
Okay, because then Mary can see, if Lisa's the one that stepped into the WPA style language, or if she sort of stayed off in the legalese, and sort of maybe that'll make Mary your observations a little bit easier.
Yeah, one of the big things was that it referenced BVW repeatedly, and I think we're dealing with salt marsh is the issue in the ACEC with the docks, not BVW, and it's a whole. So they cited the wrong section of the regulations with BVW. It should be the coastal regulations. So that's one of the main things. So.
Yeah. When you have BVW, do you have a BVW at the edge of a salt marsh on the landward side of a salt marsh? Do you hit BVW or you just slope?
You may or you may not. It could go.
Yeah.
Salt marsh directly to upland. But in general, in the ACEC, it's going to be coastal to elevation 10. That's the limit of the ACEC. So it's usually coastal.
Yeah.
You might have a fringe of BVW, in which case you could cite both the coastal and the inland regulations in it. But primarily, the docks that I've seen are it's the issue of going over salt marsh. To access water, you're trying to access the water. And
I wonder if
that's in the ACEC. That's going to be salt marsh.
Yeah. Okay. Good catch. I just would have seen BVW and thought they were talking about the landward side. But then
I don't think that's not necessarily what I think the concern is.
Right. All right. Cool. Well, thanks for catching that, Mary, and Bill, thanks for, sending that to her, and hopefully we can kill this thing. Ben's been talking about it all year. All right, cool. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Very formal. Right, roll call. Bill Lord with the thumb, Daniel.
Good night.
Kevin,
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
And
See you
Peter.
soon.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Good night.